Hello everyone and welcome. Today we need to ask the very important question: how good is the murderous psychopath Yuna Kureha right here? And I will tell you guys this right away. Very first thing I'll say, I fucking like her as a unit. I love her as a unit. But we need to talk about what she actually does, why that is the case, and all that kind of other stuff. So she has got 2 Excelis, 2 Blast Discs, and 1 Charge Disc, which is, everyone thought she was going to be a charge gorilla, but maybe she's still forest type. No, she's light type. She's a light type, not charge character, which is really weird because everyone thought that she was going to be either of those two, probably both of those two, but nope. At least she's still attack type with very hyper attack focused stuff, which is what everyone called, so at least that part makes sense. We're going to jump quickly through all her stuff before I talk about what she actually does. She's got attack up on connect, defense pierce, anti-evade. Very simple stuff that you don't really care too much about. Like sure, the defense piece can be pretty nice when you have some challenge quests or some EX quests where they specifically put extremely high defense targets, but those are extremely rare. Like they're gonna have one right now. I think challenge 10 right now has really high defense just because they want you to make use of Yuna's defense pierce. But apart from that, you probably won't see this that useful too much. Next up we have Remagia, attributes strength and damage to one enemy as well as on double, awesome. It gives attack up to self, it gives Magia damage up to self, and it gives barrier to self. Very selfish, as you would also expect from a character like this who's hyper aggressive, kind of selfish, at least when she's in fight mode. And her double is basically just more of everything. However, more importantly, now her buffs that are put on herself last for 5 turns, and she also gives herself a light attack up as well. Since all of these are self buffs, of course they do nothing for the team, but at least if she herself is a really good unit, this would amplify her power, right? So is she actually a really good unit? Well, we have to keep going through her skills in order to figure that out. The barrier in here is pretty good as well, but if you're using a Doppel or your Magia, hopefully whatever you're throwing it at is gonna die, so you probably won't need the barrier much. Moving on though, the Spirit Enhancement, this is where it actually gets interesting. Okay, she's got a bunch of normal stuff that you would have as an attacker, like crit, like anti-evade, she's got some anti-counter, some disc buffs, but here's where the interesting stuff comes in. She has a bunch of interesting things in here that we need to talk about. First off, she has the thing that Yachio and Iriyachi have, where when an ally dies, she gets attack up and defense up, and I think this buff lasts forever, like until the rest of the game's life, not until the rest of the battle. So that's pretty good if you have a bunch of allies and they all die, which once again is also something that makes sense in the lore, because lore-wise also Yuna is a very sad character because all her friends are dead, or most of her friends are dead at least, so lore-wise it also makes sense. But who is Youthberg is also a little bit more interesting as well. Like that was like the most basic stuff. But here's one step above that, a little bit more interesting. What have we got this time? Damage up and blast damage up to all allies for 5 turns at the start of the battle. This already sounds like something that's pretty good for Kimochi, and we're gonna talk about that later. But just even outside of Kimochi, just generally, this is a really nice buff to have. This is really cool to just have as a passive. Does way more than if this was just a blast damage up node for self or something. So this is way better than that. What we have next is now the next step above that, even more interesting. And what we have as the more interesting thing is the defense up at critical health. Now, why is this interesting? Why is this the most interesting thing in her entire kit? Well, by itself, this thing doesn't really mean anything. But here's when we get, here's the fun part, Remember, I said this in the news already, but you remember like way long ago when we talked about Super Handsome first coming out, and I said for Ren it would be really cool if she had like an active that hurt herself and put her in critical HP, and then she could deal more damage with her Magia Doppel, or she could have attack up defense about critical HP, something like that. Wouldn't that be really good for a character lore-wise? Like, it would make sense, right? Sadly, she didn't get anything like that. But here we have it, we have exactly this thing, receive damage to self, 80%, 80.1% of current HP, which puts her in critical HP. This thing right here doesn't even have a symbol yet, and only Yuna has it. Wow. So what does it do? So it hurts you, puts yourself in critical HP, guaranteed, since it's since it does current HP, you're not gonna kill yourself with this, right? So now that you're in critical HP, you're going to have this right here, the Crisis Guard, actually kick in, and you're gonna get the defense up critical HP, awesome. You're also gonna get 60% attack up at critical health for 3 turns, okay. You're gonna get a barrier for 10,000 damage for 3 turns, so you don't immediately die, good. And you also get 100% defense up for 3 turns at critical HP. Now some of you might be thinking, hold up, 30% defense up here, 100% defense up down there. Defense up only goes to 100%, right? Isn't this already overcapping immediately by itself? And this wouldn't stack with defense, right? It actually does. They actually made a change to how critical HP bonuses work. So now attack up at critical HP and defense up at critical HP are now separate bonuses from attack up and defense up. So not only is it now its own cap, it's also it also actually has no cap. They removed completely the cap on this ability. So now defense up and attack up, both of the critical HP, both of these don't have a cap anymore. They don't have a cap anymore. It goes way past 100%, goes as high as you want it, and that's kind of crazy. Now there's not much in this game that actually gives this effect. There's not many characters that have an effect like this. Yukika has a little bit of that, which is fun. There are some more that do it, most of them are not that great. But the fact that this now is separate from attack up and defense up and has no cap, you can now go so goddamn high. People are saying that you get to like over 200% total defense up, like a regular defense up and then critical defense up with Yuna on Yuna, which gives her an insane amount of defense. And you might be thinking, is that the highest defense that a character is going to have in this game? Probably not, because her base defense is not actually that high. Keep in mind that the higher your base defense, the stronger your buffs on the defense are going to be. And since her base defense is not that high, the buffs on her defense are not as strong as for someone like Soft Psycho has 15,000 defense. She would actually get way higher defense from effects like this, so But at least her attack is pretty darn high, so the attack with the attack up at critical HP goes so goddamn high. And since she starts the battle with blast damage up and damage increase, you can have turn 1 without even any Memoria. Turn 1, blast damage up on here with damage increase, which not just you get, but everyone gets. You get the attack up 60% with the barrier and a defense up, and even more defense up. And then on top of that, you throw some Memoria. You have Memoria that give attack up at critical HP. Like I said, there are not many that are actually good. But if you look at this very closely, you might see Memoria that you might think, it might make you think, hold up, what is that? That's her personal. That's her personal. Yes, and this is why we bring her in her personal. Her personal also gives more attack up and defense up at critical HP. So you have more of what your active does on your personal, which you probably would want to have. So that's amazing. And a lot of it as well, like 40% and 50%. Oh, great. And on top of that, you get anti-provoke. 50% anti-provoke, that's pretty good. That could be like an X factor in mirrors. That's pretty good. So far, oh my god, this is some really cool stuff. She has a theme to her. She has a lore to her that is actually part of the gameplay. One lore with Follow Friends dying is like, here you got the Fury Adept in there. You got the lore of her still actually being a good team player when she's nice. Like she has 2 modes, is her being nice when she's eating ice cream, right? And then she has fight mode. Like in fight mode, which is Magi and Doppel, she's very selfish. But in outside of fight mode, she actually is very nice to her team, and this is where this comes in. So yeah, lore and gameplay going hand in hand. Good stuff. We have gimmicks. Actually, I really think the game should have more gimmicks, and this is exactly what we need: more gimmick characters. I already said that I really like Yukika for being a gimmick, and here we have another gimmick character who is not just only the gimmick is good and everything else is terrible. She's overall actually a really good character. Now that we've said all of that, though, where does she fit in? We know she's pretty good because, oh my god, her stats are so goddamn high when she's in critical HP, which she can put herself in on command. That's pretty darn amazing, right? What does she actually do now when you play her in the game, okay? So you could play her in Kimochi, and Kimochi does seem like it makes sense. I mean, she buffs the entire team for 5 turns when the battle starts, okay? So you already get bonus damage just from having her on the team. She can put herself in critical HP and then use like something like Doppel, then have another turn which hopefully gets back to Doppel. If you have something like a Mayu Madoka team, she could get back to Doppel on that turn, and then on turn 3, when her active still has her buffs, like because these buffs last 3 turns, on turn so you Doppel, get back to Doppel, and then you have another turn where you actually have your actives ready and use your Doppel again. And if you look at the Doppel, you buff yourself, right? You buff yourself for multiple turns, especially Magia damage. So if you do exactly what I just said, where you use double, get back to double, and then double again, that second double is going to have all the attack up, the Magia damage up, the light attribute attack up. It's going to have still the effect from this on both of those doubles, hopefully. So you can kind of see how this actually does a lot of damage, like really high damage. However, it's single target. And this is kind of a problem. It's single target, and most Kimochi have at least 3 tiles. And when we're talking about single target doubles, you're probably gonna hit the damage cap, especially with attribute strength. The damage cap, by the way, is 10 million minus 1. Like 10 million damage is as much as you can do on a single attack to a single tile. So single target Magia or double can only do 10 million damage, no matter how much you have. And people very easily hit this. If people really go for damage, they just hit the 10 million damage rather easily, especially with single target attribute strengthened. So what do you do if you want to have more damage? You would have AoE Magia or AoE double that hit multiple tiles. And since Kimochi have pretty much always at least 3 tiles, you would just get like 10 million times 3, which is 30 million, which is 3 times as much as this on single target. So for Kimochi, this might not actually be the best because it's single target. And that kind of sucks because she would be so goddamn amazing for Kimochi if she was multi-target. But no, it's single target. So already, even though she can be really good for Kimochi, especially if you don't have all the buffs to actually get to the damage cap, especially then her double actually is still pretty darn good. But she won't be a top character, right? She won't be a top character. She's just a good character for Kimochi. So already that sucks. However, there might still be some whale teams that use Yuna, right? A level 1 Yuna. What whales might do, and I'm specifically saying whales because if you're not a whale, you probably don't want to play this strategy. But if you're a whale, what you might do is you keep Yuna at level 1, put her on the team, do the strategy that I described last Kimochi, where you have like 3 damage dealer and 1 character that gets sacrificed on the second wave or whatever. Just watch the video. And you would have her be that sacrifice just to come in and buff everyone with the damage increase and the blast damage up on turn 1 for the first 5 turns. Then on turn 1, you hopefully she dies. You can even help that out by using her active and hope that the enemy does enough damage. Actually, probably it's better if you don't use her active and just hope the enemy does enough damage to kill you in one shot. Which, if the enemy is dark type, like this next Kimochi, by the way, Kimochi has been announced dark type, the next Kimochi hopefully is going to kill her in one shot, so then she won't take up any more discs and her MP is safe for the rest of the battle. So yeah, that sounds like a pretty decent strategy, but you have to keep her at level 1 and she has to die immediately. And in general, this doesn't actually do that much for your team. Like the actual damage difference in playing a strategy with Yuna versus not playing a strategy, or playing a strategy with another character like Kuro maybe, who's also a good sacrifice character, is very minimal. So it doesn't actually do that much, which is why I specifically say you should only really do it if you're a whale and specifically pushing for the highest rankings in Kimochi. So outside of that, she's just good. She's just good in Kimochi. However, what about ranking, right? In ranking in mirrors, right? In mirrors, maybe she can do stuff there. She's going to be really hard to kill because she's got really high defense. Although it's not that high because her base defense isn't that good. But she can do a lot of damage, right? She can, if you're playing her on solo, like, okay, let's move away from ranked. If you're playing her solo in normal mirrors, she is a really good solo character. She has a really good chance of killing all the enemies on turn 1 immediately. And then if you don't actually kill all the enemies on turn 1, you have a pretty decent chance of actually surviving the enemy turn 1 and coming out alive and then getting a second turn and then definitely winning on turn 2. So she's actually really good in normal mirrors if you want to play a solo strategy. Although Mokyu and maybe even Ashley still might be a little bit better, it's hard to say. She at least with the personal has some anti-provoke, which might be an X factor in some cases. But let's go back to ranked. So in ranked, why isn't she not good in ranked? Because she's actually not very good in ranked at all. Why? Because in ranked you get bonus points for having more HP. You get bonus points for having more HP. You put her in your mirrors team, you press this button and you immediately throw like 100 points out the window because she's now in low HP. Probably not something we want to do. Probably not want to throw just points out the window by just pressing this button right here, okay? So maybe in ranked mirrors she's not that great. And even if you like heal her afterwards, you're basically taking her to be a damage dealer. but high-ranking mirror strategies, like rank mirror strategies, they don't need more damage dealers. They don't need more damage. There's no point for this right now. There might be some crazy gimmick strategies in tournaments, maybe. Like in tournament, maybe someone's going to be playing this. Maybe she's actually going to be pretty cool in tournaments just to be an X Factor kind of character that just randomly kills your shit. But apart from that, I don't think she's going to do too well in ranked mirrors at all. So where does that leave us? She's good in Kimochi, but not the best because she does single target. In ranked mirrors, she probably won't be used at all because she immediately hurts your score by just using her active. In solo mirrors, she might be like a normal mirrors. You can use her as a solo character, which is pretty good. For all the other kind of content, for like normal content, outside of all of the stuff that I've just mentioned, what does she do there? She's actually pretty decent there. She's actually pretty fun. I think she's probably one of the most fun characters in the game to just have a gimmick that you can just flick a button and suddenly your character does some wacky cool shit, right? And that's kind of the thing that I want more from this game. I just want to have a character that just does some wacky cool stuff and I get to laugh at it and be like, ah, isn't that cool, right? And Yuna's that kind of character. She's just fun. She's a very fun character. And so if Anniversary wasn't literally the very next event in the game, I would probably be rolling for this character just so I have a fun character, okay? That's at least my review on it. Probably one of the most fun characters we've seen in a while, in my opinion at least, because you can play her so much differently than other characters, actually trying to look for these critical HP bonuses and specifically not putting healing on your team. Don't play her together with a Kako who uses active. Don't play her together with a Madokami. You basically can't play her with Madokami because Madokami passively heals everyone. She's gonna be healed above critical HP if you just put her on the team with Madokami. Don't do that. So yeah, that is like a really different way of playing the game. But if you do find maybe some EX quests, maybe some challenge quests, where you know that if I just do a really good damage on turn 1, or if I just do for 2 or 3 turns, I just burst for 2 or 3 turns, and I'm going to be able to win this really easily. Yuna is going to be one of the best characters, like, period, to do something like that, because she's really good at having a surprise burst bang. So yeah, that's pretty good. Now we need to talk about one last thing, though. What about that other Memoria that I seen here? Just one Memoria. The kind-hearted revolutionary, the partners in crime. Horse and Tiger. What do they do? Well, they got a chance to anti-provoke. Oh, cool, more anti-provoke. 65% is decent, but I would have liked 100%. And decent attack up. So I think I said this in the news that this is kind of like Space Hug, where it gives a lot of an anti-effect. In Space Hugs, it was like 85% or 80% anti-evade. Here we have like 65% anti-provoke, and on top of that, you get a bunch of attack up. It's pretty good. It's pretty good, but unless you specifically want to use this in PvP to counter some enemies that you know have provoke, like a Sudachi, and then hope you don't have terrible RNG, this is going to be great. Like I can see some people use this in mirrors just to hope to get around a Sudachi or something like that, but even then it could potentially fail, so this is not something that will like define the meta, or this is not something that absolutely everyone will use just because it could just fail. But still pretty decent. Overall, though, I'm a big fan of this, and I hope we see more characters like this. And of course, if you like her, roll for her. And that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and I'll see you guys next time.